In this video, I'd like to do a quick walkthrough of the hair helmet setup that I did, just to add a little extra dynamics so that the hair didn't look so static. Here you can see the results. Let's just go ahead and hit play. And just little ringlets here kind of bouncing around. Everything else is pretty static. It was just looking weird that that was the only part not moving with all the cloth. I just decided to do an incredibly simple setup. Let's walk through it real quick here. So just to retrieve the hair as we normally would for any piece of geometry, I added an attribute for animation so that it would follow the animation when it was underneath the hat. So you can see here we have the hat in this area. So any place where it was red, whoops, I quickly threw the color red there. Wherever it was intersecting either the head or the hat. And with that value, I also use that value to create a quick group called hair disable using a group expression node. And so I created a point attribute for anything that is in the animation attribute to create a hair disable. Later I created an attribute called collision ignore, and that default value for that is an integer, and it's 0, the default value. So everything collides except for anything that's in the hair disable group. So in the next point wrangle here, I take the hair disable group and I set that value to collision ignore to 1. So there's no collision happening with any of the pieces of geometry that are pinned under the head. I put a simple cloth and struts after that, and that's all I really am using. I was going to blend this in with the regular combined simulation, but I decided that it really doesn't need to. It doesn't need to interact with anything. Okay, so for the cloth, I went with pretty much the default settings on everything. You can see here. I added a little bit of extra damping ratio, and the stiffness, I lowered it a little bit because it was a little stiff. So I just went with a slightly lower value. For the struts, so I let the struts go any distance they want, and this allowed the little ringlets to get springs from all parts of the head, and this kind of kept them all together. Otherwise I would have had to use some crazy bend stiffness and etc. And I didn't want there to be struts just on the inside of the hair. You can't see them anyway, and it does the job. So I didn't have to use a lot of strength on my struts to get these actually working just 0.01. And I just had a nice spread, a direction jitter, and I only have 1 per point, so it's pretty light, and it sims fairly quickly. And then later when I did the point deform, I just tacked it in here to the end, to the side. So I just did a 1-to-1 transfer. That's it for the hair setup.